Today, we're breaking down 5 massive disasters and the small, normal decisions that helped trigger them. You'll see Challenger, Chernobyl, Titanic, Deepwater Horizon, and Fukushima. Watch closely. The biggest failures rarely start big. They start with choices that feel routine, until the chain reaction begins. Disasters work like dominoes. One small choice knocks over the next, until the system hits a point where nothing can stop it. The first domino rarely looks scary, it looks reasonable. That's why these chains repeat across industries, teams, and decades. Here are 5 mistakes that caused massive disasters. Pay attention to what happens before the headline moment. Warnings get ignored, safety margins get trimmed, confusing signals get explained away, and backups don't hold. Different technologies and different eras, but the same failure pattern shows up again and again. Challenger, Cape Canaveral, Florida, USA. The shuttle sits on the pad on a freezing morning. Cold seems like a minor detail, but cold changes materials. In high-energy systems, tiny changes in flexibility and sealing can decide everything. That's where this chain begins. Engineers warned management. Low temperatures could cause a seal failure, but schedules were tight, eyes were watching, and delaying felt expensive. This is the trap. Risk doesn't feel immediate, so it gets treated like acceptable uncertainty, even when experts are signaling a clear boundary. The critical part was an O-ring, a rubber seal inside a joint. In the cold, rubber stiffens. If it doesn't flex instantly, hot gas can slip through before the seal seats. The failure doesn't need to be total. A brief leak at the wrong moment can start the chain. That tiny gap turned into a jet of hot gas like a blowtorch, aimed at the rocket's fuel system. Early on, it isn't dramatic. It's small and easy to underestimate. But once a hot stream has a path, it erodes protection quickly and turns a minor issue into structural failure. Then it escalated in seconds. Once the chain reaction starts, you don't get extra time to rethink the decision. Heat, pressure, and force compound fast. In these moments, people aren't causing the outcome anymore. They're watching physics follow through on earlier choices. Lesson. When experts say conditions are unsafe, that warning is a safety barrier. If you step over it, you're betting against physics. Meetings and schedules can change. Material limits can't. If a component can't perform under conditions, it will fail exactly when it matters. Chernobyl, near Pripyat, Ukraine. It begins with a late-night test. Tests should be controlled and conservative, but this one pushed the reactor into a risky state. When you test at the edge of stability, you need more margin and more monitoring, not fewer guardrails. Operators lowered power, but it dropped into an unstable zone. In unstable conditions, small changes can create big, unpredictable effects. This is where normal intuition breaks down, because the system stops behaving smoothly. The correct move is to stabilize or stop, not push forward. To keep the test going, critical safety systems and alarms were disabled. That's like removing seatbelts because they're inconvenient. Safety systems exist for the exact moment things become confusing. Turning them off doesn't make success more impressive. It removes the barriers that prevent escalation. Readings became confusing. People don't see the future, they see gauges. When gauges don't make sense, humans guess. Confusing data is not neutral. It's a signal that you're operating outside clear understanding, where a wrong interpretation can become a disaster multiplier. They hit the emergency shutdown, but under those conditions, the shutdown caused a sudden spike. A safety action became dangerous because the system was already unstable. Once you operate in the wrong region, even correct actions can backfire. Context matters as much as the procedure. The chain reaction ended in explosions and a massive release. A test became one of the worst nuclear disasters in history. Notice the pattern. Risky setup, safeguards reduced, signals confusing, then a trigger. By the time disaster is visible, the protection layers are already gone. Lesson. If a test requires turning off safety to succeed, the test is unsafe. You never trade safety for completion. If success depends on disabling protections, you're not proving the system works. You're proving it can be pushed until it fails without a net. Titanic, North Atlantic Ocean. People call it bad luck, but risk is danger multiplied by speed. Speed reduces reaction time and increases impact. In known hazard zones, speed isn't just performance, it's a safety decision. This chain starts long before the iceberg is seen. Ice warnings were coming in from other ships. The danger wasn't invisible, but information doesn't save you if decisions don't change. Warnings only matter when they alter behavior. If they become background noise, you get the worst of both worlds: known risk and unchanged exposure. At night with calm water, icebergs are harder to spot. That means less reaction time. Less time means the margin for error disappears. When visibility is low, slowing down is a safety layer. Keeping speed high assumes perfect detection and perfect response, every time. When the iceberg appeared, the turn came too late. At high speed, you can make the correct move and still run out of space. This is why prevention matters more than reaction. By the time you can see the hazard, the outcome is already constrained by earlier choices. The damage opened multiple compartments. The ship could survive some flooding, but not that many sections filling at once. Systems fail when one event creates multiple simultaneous failures. It's not one leak, it's too many leaks at the same time. Overwhelming design assumptions. Then evacuation revealed another weakness. Not enough lifeboats and confusion. If you aren't prepared, you can't improvise your way out of physics. Emergencies compress time and amplify uncertainty. Readiness is a safety layer too. Without it, even survivable incidents can become catastrophe. Deepwater Horizon, Gulf of Mexico, USA. Offshore drilling is high risk by nature, so it depends on procedures and layered checks. When time and money pressure rise, safety margins shrink quietly. Steps get rushed, shortcuts feel tempting, and good enough starts sounding reasonable. Several decisions reduced safety margins, time-saving choices, and disputed test results. The danger isn't a single shortcut, it's the accumulation. Each time a layer is weakened, the system becomes more dependent on everything else going perfectly. That's not resilience. That's fragility waiting for an abnormal event. A critical pressure test gave warning signs, but it was misread or dismissed. Confusing data is dangerous because people interpret it the way they want when the outcome is inconvenient. If finishing is the goal, ambiguity becomes probably fine instead of stop and verify. Gas entered the well and raced upward. Once gas rises, everything becomes a race. Minutes matter, and each delay makes the next step harder. At that point, people aren't preventing a disaster, they're discovering that earlier protection layers were already missing and time is gone. The blowout preventer was the last line of defense, and it failed to fully seal the well. When the last barrier fails, you're no longer preventing disaster, you're reacting to it. That's why layered defenses matter. You never want one device to be the final hope. The result was fire and one of the largest oil spills in history. These events aren't one bad moment. They're systems losing layer after layer until nothing is left. Lesson: when the data says something is wrong, you stop, even if it costs millions, because it can cost far more. Fukushima, Fukushima Prefecture, Japan. An earthquake hits and the reactors shut down as designed. That part worked. The disaster came from what happened after. Even after shutdown, heat remains, so cooling must continue. The real risk becomes loss of power and loss of cooling. Then the tsunami arrived, bigger than the defenses were built for. When nature exceeds design assumptions, backups must take over. But backups only help if they're protected from the same hazard. If everything depends on the same vulnerable location, one event can erase the plan. Backup generators were flooded and power was lost. Without electricity, cooling systems can't run, and without cooling, heat starts building immediately. This is where time becomes the enemy. The system doesn't pause because you're troubleshooting. Heat keeps rising and options keep shrinking. No power means no cooling. Water flow stops, temperature climbs, and the situation becomes a countdown. At this stage, the goal isn't perfection. It's keeping at least one safety layer alive long enough to restore power or alternate cooling. Every delay increases risk and reduces choices. Hydrogen built up inside reactor buildings and explosions followed. This is symbolic of a deeper point. Not one failure, but multiple failures stacking at once. When power, cooling, and containment are stressed together, the system can't stabilize. Cascading failure is what happens when layers fall fast. Evacuations began, and recovery stretched on for years. Some disasters happen in minutes, but consequences last a lifetime. Displacement, cleanup, economic loss, and trust damage. That's why planning for worst case isn't pessimism. It's responsibility when the downside is catastrophic. Lesson: defense in depth. You stack layers, seawalls, elevated generators, watertight doors, extra batteries, backup pumps. So one failure doesn't become the end. Each layer blocks a different pathway to disaster. If one cracks, the next must still work. That's how you stop domino chains. The same pattern appears every time. Warnings ignored, safety reduced, speed chosen, data dismissed, backup power lost. Each chain ends the same way because the system runs out of layers. The goal isn't to blame people, it's to recognize the repeating failure shape and design against it. The real lesson is a short list. Listen to warnings, don't remove safety margins, stop when the data looks wrong, and plan for worst case. These aren't slogans, they're practical rules for complex systems. Follow them early and you break the chain while it's still small. Want a part 2? Tell me what I should cover next in the comments. If you like simple visual explanations, subscribe. More coming soon. Thanks for watching. Your support really helps. These videos take weeks to make.